When Ada's husband, Emeka, first suggested hiring a housemaid, she brushed off the idea. They were a middle-class family in Lagos, with their 2 young children, a modest but comfortable home, and a rhythm that didn't leave much room for strangers. But Emeka was insistent. "You're always tired, Ada," he reasoned. "We need help, especially with your work and the kids." Reluctantly, Ada agreed, though she couldn't shake the unease growing in her chest. A few weeks later, Emeka announced he had found someone. "Her name is Cynthia. She's from the village and needs work. Her family situation is tough, so I thought we could give her a chance," he explained. When Cynthia arrived, Ada's apprehension deepened. She was tall, strikingly beautiful, and carried herself with a confidence that felt almost out of place. Her appearance alone set Ada on edge, though she couldn't pinpoint why. "Welcome," Ada said with forced warmth, trying to mask her discomfort. Cynthia smiled brightly, her gap-toothed grin both charming and unnerving. As the evening unfolded, Ada observed her husband's interactions with the new maid. Emeka was polite but not overly familiar, yet Ada's insecurities gnawed at her. Was she being paranoid, or had Emeka's gaze lingered on Cynthia a moment too long? By bedtime, Ada's thoughts raced. She stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying every moment of the day. "Am I overthinking this?" she whispered into the darkness. She resolved to keep an eye on Cynthia and Emeka. After all, she told herself, it was better to be cautious than blindsided. The first few days with Cynthia were uneventful. She was efficient, polite, and seemed eager to please. She woke up early, cooked breakfast, cleaned the house, and even helped the children with their homework. Ada found herself grudgingly impressed by the girl's work ethic. "She's doing well," Emeka remarked one evening over dinner. Ada nodded, though her lips tightened at his tone. Was that admiration she detected? Cynthia, for her part, maintained a respectful distance from the couple. She addressed Emeka as Ogum and Ada as Madam, never overstepping her boundaries. Still, Ada couldn't shake the sense of unease. She noticed how Cynthia's laughter echoed a bit too sweetly when Emeka told a joke, or how her movements seemed deliberate when he was around. One evening, Ada's sister, Chika, visited. "Your housemaid is very beautiful," Chika commented casually. "You're lucky she's hardworking too." Ada's stomach churned at the words, though she forced a smile. "Yes, she's doing her job well." As the weeks passed, Ada's wariness deepened. Cynthia's presence felt like a shadow growing in the corners of her life. Yet, she couldn't pinpoint anything specific to complain about. "You're being irrational," she scolded herself repeatedly. But the unease remained, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for a reason to rise. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the first crack appeared in Cynthia's otherwise flawless facade. Ada had asked her to prepare yam and eggs for breakfast. The aroma of frying onions filled the air, but when Ada tasted the food, it was oversalted to the point of being inedible. "Cynthia, this is too salty," Ada said, her tone sharp with irritation. Cynthia's face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, madam. I'll make another batch right away." Ada nodded curtly, watching as Cynthia quickly set to work. It wasn't a major mistake, but it gave Ada something to latch onto. For the rest of the day, she scrutinized Cynthia's every move, looking for flaws she could point out to justify her growing unease. That evening, Emeka returned home and noticed the tension. "What happened?" he asked after dinner. Ada hesitated, then recounted the morning incident. "It's like she's not as perfect as she seems," Ada concluded, her tone clipped. Emeka frowned slightly. "It's just a small mistake. Don't be too hard on her. Nobody's perfect, Ada." His words, meant to pacify her, only fueled her irritation. Was he defending Cynthia? That night, as Ada lay in bed, her mind churned with thoughts. She began to wonder if her husband's leniency towards Cynthia was innocent or something more. The idea was unsettling, and it kept her awake long after Emeka's steady breathing signaled he had fallen asleep. Over the next few weeks, Ada noticed subtle changes in the household. Cynthia had become more comfortable, her demeanor less reserved. She chatted more freely with Emeka, her laughter ringing out in the evenings as they shared stories about village life. Ada's irritation grew. She began finding fault in everything Cynthia did, from the way she folded the laundry to how she interacted with the children. "She's too familiar," Ada complained to Chica during a phone call. "It's like she's forgetting her place." Chica's response was cautious. "Maybe you're reading too much into it. If she's doing her work well, isn't that what matters?" But Ada wasn't convinced. One evening, as she stood in the doorway of the living room, she saw Emeka and Cynthia laughing over something on the television. The sight sent a pang of jealousy coursing through her. She cleared her throat loudly, and both of them turned to look at her. "Ada, come join us," Emeka said, patting the seat beside him. But Ada shook her head. "I'm tired. I'll go to bed early," she replied, her voice tight. As she climbed the stairs, Ada's heart pounded. She couldn't ignore the growing tension in her home. Something had to change, and soon, before things spiraled out of control. Ada's unease began to manifest in ways she couldn't control. She found herself checking Emeka's phone when he left it unattended, looking for any sign of inappropriate communication. Though she found nothing incriminating, her suspicion only grew. One morning, she decided to confront Cynthia indirectly. "Cynthia, you've been doing well," Ada began, her tone carefully neutral. "But remember, we have certain expectations in this house. Boundaries must be respected." Cynthia's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "Yes, madam. I always try to respect your rules." Ada forced a smile. "Good. Keep it that way." Later that evening, Emeka noticed Ada's distant mood. "Is everything okay?" he asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. She hesitated, then blurted out, "I think Cynthia is becoming too comfortable here." Emeka frowned. "What do you mean?" "She's doing her job, Ada. Isn't that what we hired her for?" Ada's frustration bubbled over. "It's not just about her work, Emeka. It's the way she acts around you, the way she's always laughing at your jokes." Emeka sighed, his expression a mix of confusion and exasperation. "Ada, you're imagining things. Cynthia is just being polite." But Ada wasn't convinced. As she lay in bed that night, she resolved to take matters into her own hands. If Emeka wouldn't see the problem, she'd have to address it herself. Ada's opportunity to act came sooner than she anticipated. One afternoon, she decided to return home early from work, hoping to catch a glimpse of how Cynthia behaved when she thought no one was watching. Quietly unlocking the front door, Ada stepped inside and heard laughter coming from the living room. Peeking around the corner, she saw Cynthia and Emeka seated on the couch, a shared moment of amusement evident as they watched something on Emeka's phone. Ada's chest tightened. While their interaction seemed innocent, her insecurities painted a different picture. Clearing her throat, she stepped fully into the room. Both turned to her with startled expressions. "Ada, you're home early," Emeka said, his tone casual but his eyes slightly wary. "Yes, I decided to take the afternoon off," she replied, her gaze fixed on Cynthia, who had already risen to her feet. "Madam, welcome," Cynthia said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. The tension in the room was palpable. Ada forced a smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," she said, her words laced with an edge. "Of course not," Emeka replied quickly. "We were just watching a funny video." "I see," Ada said, her tone neutral. Turning to Cynthia, she added, "Why don't you check on the children? They should be back from school by now." "Yes, madam," Cynthia replied, quickly exiting the room. Once they were alone, Ada turned to Emeka. "Do you think it's appropriate to be so friendly with the housemaid?" she asked, her voice low but firm. Emeka frowned. "Ada, what are you implying? She's just doing her job, and I was being civil." "Civil or overly familiar?" Ada countered. "You need to remember the boundaries too, Emeka." Her husband sighed, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Ada, you're overreacting. There's nothing going on here. But Ada wasn't convinced. Her instincts told her there was more to the story, and she was determined to uncover it, no matter what it took. In the following days, Ada's suspicions continued to mount. She became hyper-aware of every interaction between Emeka and Cynthia, dissecting even the smallest gestures for hidden meaning. Her obsession started to take a toll on her own peace of mind and the harmony of the household. One evening, while Emeka was working late, Ada seized the opportunity to speak to Cynthia directly. She called the housemaid into the kitchen where she was preparing dinner. "Cynthia, we need to talk," Ada began, her voice firm but calm. Cynthia looked up from her chopping board, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Yes, madam. I've noticed you've grown quite comfortable in this house. That's good in some ways, but I need to remind you of your position here. This is my home, and I expect you to respect that." Cynthia blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Madam, I don't understand. Have I done something wrong?" Ada hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words. "It's not about what you've done, but how you carry yourself. Be mindful of your actions and interactions, especially with my husband." The insinuation hung heavy in the air. Cynthia's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "I understand, madam. I'll be careful." Ada watched her closely, trying to gauge the sincerity of her response. Satisfied for the moment, she let the matter drop, but her mind remained restless. When Emeka returned home later that night, he noticed Ada's tension. "Is everything okay?" he asked as they settled into bed. "Yes," Ada replied curtly, turning away from him. But deep down, she knew things were far from okay. The storm brewing in her heart was only growing stronger, and it was only a matter of time before it erupted. The days stretched into weeks, and while the household seemed calm on the surface, Ada's mind remained a battlefield. She tried to focus on her work and children, but her thoughts always circled back to Cynthia. Every small smile, every casual interaction between Cynthia and Emeka felt like a challenge to her authority. One evening, Ada decided to test Emeka's reactions. As the family sat down for dinner, she deliberately praised Cynthia. "The food is well prepared tonight, Cynthia. You're improving." Cynthia beamed. "Thank you, madam. I'll continue to do my best." Ada shifted her focus to Emeka, who smiled in agreement. "It's true. She's been a great help around here," he said. Ada's heart sank. His words, though harmless, fed her insecurity. Maybe a little too helpful, she thought bitterly. After dinner, as the children played in the living room, Ada pulled Emeka aside. "I think we need to reconsider having a housemaid," she said. Emeka looked at her, surprised. "Why?" "Cynthia has been doing a good job. The kids like her, and the house has never been more organized." Ada crossed her arms. "It's not just about the work, Emeka. I don't feel comfortable with her here anymore." Emeka sighed, his patience clearly waning. "Ada, this isn't about Cynthia. This is about your insecurity. You need to trust me." His words stung, but Ada refused to back down. "Trust isn't the issue," she insisted. "Boundaries are, and I think she's crossing them." Emeka shook his head and walked away, leaving Ada feeling frustrated and unheard. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, determined to take matters into her own hands. The brewing conflict was no longer just between Ada and Cynthia. It was beginning to wedge itself between Ada and Emeka.